Howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, another exciting and informative video. We're going to install XCP-NG on my Dell R710. And in addition to that, we're going to pass through an entire SAS controller, and we're going to install Freenas in a virtual machine and see if we can give it direct access to those hard drives on that SAS controller. So, exciting? You be the judge. But I like a challenge, and this is definitely a challenging video to make. So, come on along. We're going to get started right now. So, today's adventure starts with this tiny little USB key that contains wonderful, wonderful things. I'm going to go shove this... insert this USB key into my Dell R710 Prometheus server. Although it's not going to be called Prometheus anymore. It's going to be called XCP-Dell 2. And you're about to find out why. So why am I embarking on this journey that is certainly doomed to fail? Well, no, we can't have that idea, right? We can't have that thought. Well, Tom over at Lawrence Systems, I'm a big avid fan of his channel. Tom is just I don't know how he does it, to be honest with you. Runs a business, got a family, and he manages to pump out YouTube video after YouTube video. He's got security videos, he's got Unify videos. You know, if you get a chance, go check out his channel. But Tom has inspired me to embrace open source in my server rack. And so I'm moving off of Hyper-V and on to XCP-NG. In fact, a video after this one is going to explain what extent I've taken that to. But I've used Hyper-V. I love Hyper-V. ESXi, I like ESXi, but their new licensing on ESXi has just kind of put me off of it. And Proxmox, it's good, but I don't like it as well as I do XCP-NG. So, the goal today is going to be to put XCP-NG on that Dell R710, the one with the 6 hard drives in it that I typically use as my backup Hyper-V and backup archive server, just to put, you know, for archival storage, for nearline storage. You folks have been after me for a couple of years now to run Freenas, and I told you why I don't like Freenas. But I'm going to attempt to do that. So, this is going to be an involved video. You're going to see it warts and all, okay? I'm going to show you how I install XCP. I'll try to keep it down to small. This may run to a small video, but this may run into multiple videos. I just don't know what we're going to run into. Then the ultimate goal, as you know, I put a new LSPCI controller, SAS controller that was flashed in IT mode into that Dell for the express purpose of being able to do what I'm going to do today. So the first thing we're going to do is get XCP-NG installed in there. Then we're going to make sure we have all the updates to XCP-NG. Then we're going to figure out, we're going to create a Freenas virtual machine. Yeah, I know. Not a great idea. Well, actually it is, if things go to plan. But that means we're going to have to pass through the LSPCI SAS HBA adapter to Freenas. In other words, separate it from the entire rest of the computer and give it completely over to Freenas virtual machine. Now, fortunately, I'm in a situation where I can do that because I have an SSD drive installed in there that is running on the serial ATA controller that is on the motherboard. So I can dedicate that serial ATA controller to XCP-NG and still pass through the SAS controller to Freenas and let it control the drives in an array. So that's our goal today. Pretty lofty one, right? Yeah, I bet it is. Anyway, let's get the video started right now. Alright folks, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and power on the system. I'm running a Windows 7 virtual machine. I put Hyper-V on my Windows 10 machine, and I'm running a Windows 7 machine in there so that I can use an older version of Internet Explorer and Java and have it all work with my Dell. And I've done a video on that before. But so we're going to boot up. It's time to say I've already got Windows Server 2019 installed on here. But again, this is a lab server, so we can play around with it. That's the beauty of having lab machines, huh? So it's going to take a little while to boot up, but I want you to see what it is that I go through. And I apologize for the screen size, but you'll get the gist of what's going on. Now, as this thing boots, I'm going to need to press the F11 key to get it to boot off the USB. So I'll go ahead and press that now, and you see it says entering BIOS boot manager. I don't have these servers set up for UEFI. I'm not a big fan of UEFI. I think it complicates my life. And this PowerEdge needs a BIOS update. The current version for these R710s is 6.6.0. I just have not done it on this one yet. And I have tried to load Freenas on these PowerEdge Dells before, and the problem has always been the SAS controller in RAID mode. Freenas just goes into this loop. So we're trying things, and as you can see, the Avago Technology MPT SAS 2, you'll see it. All the drives are presented as just regular hard drives to this SAS controller. It's just a pass-through. And it should come up and say it's in IT mode here in a second. And that's how we're able to do this. You know, you can't use a normal RAID controller on these Dells. You have to replace it in order for it to work with Freenas. It's my understanding. You can see we're in IT mode version 20.07. We also have our Mellanox 10 gig network cards in these. Alright, so now we're up to the boot menu, so we're just going to come down to the hard drive C, and then we'll get another menu, and then I can go boot off the front USB key. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Now, I already have a 1 terabyte SSD drive in here, which will be great for virtual machines. And I tell you, I have really fallen in love with XCP. I forget how much. I used to use Zen server, Citrix Zen server, 10 years ago when I started my virtualization journey. And I fell in love with Zen then, and I tell you, XCP is really, really a good hypervisor. It is missing a few bells and whistles and tools, but, you know, as far as stability goes, I have had nothing but good luck with the XCP-NG. Thanks again to Tom for turning me on to it. Now, I've done an install of XCP before, but I want you to see it again on these Dells. So we're going to go ahead and select a US keyboard, which is fine. I'm installing version 7.6.0. I'm going to click OK here. Now, it should see all my devices out there. I'm going to accept the EULA. Now, I am only going to install it onto this Samsung SSD, this 232 gig, but you can see all my other hard drives are in there. My Hitachis, my no-name white label 2 terabyte drive, that's this one right here, the MB2000E BZQC. Then I have some Seagates, and I have some Hitachi, and I have another Seagate ST2000M001. One ER1, but anyway, we're going to install on this onto SDA. So we'll go ahead and highlight that and click OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and just leave it alone. I'm not going to use the other machine or the other hard drives for virtual machine storage. Now I like to use thin provisioning, but I'm not going to complicate matters, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is with LVM, and I'm going to come down here to OK. And we're going to install off of local media, tell it OK. It's going to go out and search for the repository. I'm going to skip the verification because I know my media is good. I'm going to enter a super secret password here. And that is actually the password, super secret. Yeah, no, it's not. I am going to use ETH0 for now, and then we'll switch over. Down here is the Mellanox card, but I'm going to use ETH0 for now. And I'm going to give it a static IP, And I need to go look up that IP address. All right, Prometheus was at 5.8, so that's the IP we're going to use. So go ahead and enter that here. Subnet mask. Our gateway. We're not going to use the VLAN for now. Oh, invalid gateway. Ah! Why didn't y'all tell me I was entering the wrong gateway? That's funny. I've got to type around the microphone, so that's always fun, huh? Alright, tell it okay. We're going to use XCP-Dell 2. I know, we could call it Prometheus, but we could change that later. Here's my internal, and give it an external DNS server as well, so it can find its way out to the interwebs. So we're in America, and we are in, let's say, Chicago. That's Central Time Zone. Use NTP, and I'm just going to use the pool server. Okay. Install. Now it's going to warn me my existing data is going to be wiped out. That's fine. Okay, this is going to take however long it takes. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here, and we'll come back when something significant happens. Alright, so the install is almost complete. It's asking, do we want to install any supplemental packs? And no, we don't. So this portion of the installation will appear to get stuck sometimes at about 40%. But just be patient and wait. Your machine is not locked up. It's doing some finish up task in the background. It can take a few minutes, so I have made the mistake before of being impatient and not waiting for this to complete. So keep that in mind. Just be patient. This screen will clear itself up after a minute or two. Alright, so it's been about 3 minutes, and it tells me it's ready to reboot. So I'm going to go ahead, and it tells you to remove the USB key. You can do that if you choose. I am going to simply click or hit OK. And then once it shuts down and restarts, I will tell it to boot off the internal SSD drive. I really probably don't need to do that because by default it should boot off the internal SSD, so we shall see. And I'm going to be playing with my gain on this microphone through the video, so I apologize if the video goes up and down. I had a spot set on this microphone, and now it's I've lost it for some reason. Alright, crisis averted. I just saw a big puff of black smoke come out of my neighbor's backyard, and you know, fires get out of control really easy over here. Anyway, back to what we're doing. It looks like we are up and running. I'm just waiting for it to come up and tell me it has an IP address, and then we'll switch over to the XCP center and add this as a server. Okay, so there we go. It looks like it's up and running. Alright, so I'm over to the XCP-NG center, and I'm going to go ahead and right click on there and add a new host. And that's going to be at 192.168.5.8. Root is the username, and then our super secret password. Click on add. We're going to go ahead and accept the certificate. And then we should see our server over here. Alright, and we do. So there's our memory, we've got some storage, we've got networking, we got our NICs, no GPU, we got USB, console, performance, etc. So good, good, good. Now the first thing I like to do is come over here to storage and add a new storage repository, and we're going to add our ISO library through Windows file sharing. Click on next, next. Now mine is on 192.168.5.3 under the ISO folder. I believe that's the IP address of my Synology NAS. Go ahead and log on. And this will give us access to all of our ISO files. If I've done this correctly, it appears I have. So now I should be able to go into that library and view all the ISO files I have in there. Yes, I can. Now the next thing I like to do is get my networking figured out. Now, I am going to be using 10 gig on here. Now initially I set up my network card, my management card, as network 0. And actually I'm going to rename this way I know what it is, and this is the MCS 1 subnet, 1 gigabit subnet. I'm just going to go ahead and change that name. Now this one is the 10 gig network, so MCS-10 gigabit subnet. We'll just call it that. Now what I want to do is I want to move the management network over to this IP. So I'm going to come down here to configure, and I'm going to move this over to the 10 gig, and I'm going to use these settings. And I'm going to go ahead and reconfigure anyway. And that should take over. And then this one, I'm also going to come in here and I'm going to take off this, right click on it, go to properties. I do not want it to use this network card for the virtual machines. I don't want it to use any of these for the virtual machines. So I'm going to take these off. So the 10 gig becomes my management interface, and it becomes the interface for the virtual machines to use. So make sure that's selected automatically. Alright, and it looks like that's working. So let's go ahead and we will disconnect. And then I'm going to reconnect just to make sure that everything is copacetic. And yes, it is using that management network interface on the 10 gig subnet. So now, even though this link is connected, we're not going to use it for any VMs. Let's go and look. Okay, that's a Mellanox. We've got that connected. That's NIC 4. Okay, so I think everything is good. Now, the next thing I want to do is go out to a console. I'm going to log in, and I'm going to do a LSPCI. And what I'm looking for is, you know what, I probably need to do a different command. Let me go find the command I need to do. Alright, so I'm out of the console connection, and I've done a command, lspci space pipe space grep space lsi in caps, and what that has done is it's returned the ID number of the SCSI controller, or the LSA logic SAS controller. You see it's identified it properly, and it's given me the ID number 05:00.0. Now what we need to do in order to pass this through to a virtual machine so that the Freenas machine will have direct control over that, or over these drives, is we need to isolate this controller from XCP. Now, that could be a problem. If you have other uses for these hard drives out on this controller, this is not going to work for you. This is why I put a separate serial ATA SSD drive in there to boot off of and to put virtual machines on, so that I could dedicate the controller and all the drives on it to Freenas. And you're going to need to do that in order for Freenas to work properly. So the next step is to isolate this controller from XCP-NG. So what I'm going to do, rather than showing you, because I've actually made this happen, but I want to show you what I had to do to make it happen. So you remember I spoke previously about the LSPCI command. I'll make sure I link this article down below in the notes so that y'all can go to this and follow along. And so when you run this command, here's the output you will get. It will tell you what kind of controller you have in there. And then what you can do is make a note of the interface address. In my case, it was 05:00:0. And so what I had to do was type in this command at the command prompt on XCP. And what this does is this makes an entry into the grub CFG file that tells Zen when it boots to ignore this device, to hide it from Zen server or XCP. And then you need to reboot. Now don't do what I did, and that is I copy and pasted this command into my command prompt, and without hitting the enter key it went ahead and ran the command. Problem was that that was my memory controller, so I wasn't able to boot back into XCP. So I had to reload XCP from scratch because I didn't know how to fix that problem. And then I rebooted and made sure that it was no longer in use by XCP, which it was not. Then what you need to do is create a virtual machine for your Freenas install. And all I did was create a blank machine. I gave it 4 processors. I gave it about an 8 gig hard drive. Yeah, an 8 gig serial ATA hard drive, virtual hard drive. Connected it to a network adapter. And then I, after I created it, then I was able to come out and run this command here. Get my mouse over here. I was able to run this command right here, xevm list, from the command prompt. And what you'll get is a virtual machine UID. Yeah, you have to create that virtual machine first, of course. So you go out and get that VM UID, and then you add that with this command right here. Actually right here, of course, with your VM ID and the proper SCSI, or I'm sorry, the proper device ID, which in my case was 5 and not 4, as you see here. And then once I did that, then I was able to go into Freenas, and lo and behold, let me show you what I saw. So there you go. I've got Freenas 11.2 U4.1 installed, up and running, and look what I've managed to do. I've managed to create a couple of volumes on Freenas. And one of them is a test volume 1. It's 7 terabytes in size. That's 4 of those 2 terabyte drives. And I went ahead and called this machine Prometheus again. But the test volume I created was a 4 2 terabyte drive array. And it's in Z1, RAID Z1. And then I had 2 920 gig hard drives left, so I just created a mirrored volume of those. And as you can see, I've gone out there and created some shares, and let me tell you, it worked like a charm. I haven't had any trouble at all with this. Now tonight what I'm going to do is start copying some data over to these test arrays, or test, and see what kind of speed I get. I'm going to try and copy directly from the Synology NAS over to the Freenas unit without a unit in between them, and see how it does. But yeah, it's up and running just fine. It sees my processors. I've given it 8 gig of RAM. I've got plenty of RAM to spare on that server. That unit has 40 or 48 gig of RAM on it, so giving 8 gig to Freenas is not a problem. And the initial testing I've done, the drive transfer, or the file transfer speeds are about 80 megabytes per second. Not quite as good as my Windows or my Xpenology or Synology data transfer rates, but they'll pass. And keep in mind, I was copying it through a Windows 10 machine from my Xpenology NAS onto Freenas. So we'll see how the copy does when I copy directly from my NAS unit. And I'm going to do some large files and just see how they do. So let's actually get that started, and I'll show you what it looks like. But Freenas is up and running. Alright, so here I am. I'm over on Hermes, which is my home NAS, my Xpenology NAS, and I'm copying data. I'm copying some very large video files over the network from this unit to the Freenas virtual machine with direct attached storage, of course. And sometimes I'm getting 300 megabytes per second, sometimes I'm getting 100 megabytes per second. So time will tell. I'm starting to fill those drives up, and I'm going to leave them running. As you can see, this copy is going to take about an hour to finish, and we'll see if it maintains the speed through most of this copy procedure. And I'll come back when it's done, and we'll go out and look at the Freenas unit and see how it's doing. But you see, one of my chief complaints has been resolved. I'm getting excellent transfer speeds to this virtual Freenas server, and still don't like the Freenas interface when you compare it to something like Xpenology, but everybody's been after me to do a Freenas video, so here you go to those naysayers. And we'll see how the data transfer does over time. Alright, so I'm over at Freenas while we're waiting on the copy to finish. And you can see I've got it on CPU load right now. So it's loading those CPUs at about 60% as time goes on. These are the disk stats, just so you can see them. And keep in mind, I am doing a PCI pass-through on that SAS controller on that HBA card. So Freenas has direct access to those drives. It bypasses the controller and takes direct control of the drive. So if you look real quick, I'm just going to scroll through these real quick. It gives it. I like the reporting. They're ugly. The reports are ugly, but I'm used to that. These are typical Linux, non-GUI reports, and I'm using the old interface on Freenas because the new one is not working. They've still got bugs in that GUI, and it's not reporting these like it should be on the dashboard. So, but this is a disk activity. You can see it is monitoring the temperatures of the drives, with the exception of DA3. I don't know why, and DA5. But the rest are, let's go see on the memory usage. And keep in mind, Freenas is going to use as much memory as you give it. So if I even give it 16 gig of RAM, it would use 16 gig of RAM. And that's the way the operating system should work. You should be using all that memory you give to it. And then, of course, you can see our swap utilization is minuscule. We have 6 gig free and 0 used right now. So. And then our 10 gigabit network card, it's actually running at gigabit speed because that's the speed of the network card in that Xpenology NAS, so we're not going to get any better speed than that. Let's see what our partitions look like. Give you an idea. Our system processes and uptime, our target port, and how ZFS is doing. So ARC request, prefetch data, metadata, demand metadata, and ARC hit ratio. So the virtual Freenas is running great. I'm actually pretty impressed with it, and I think our disk transfer speeds, they're still at about 116 megabytes per second. So we'll come back when something changes. Alright, so the copy was successful. I'm going to show you the results of that here in a minute, but one of my pet peeves is software that doesn't work. And I am currently using Microsoft Edge as a browser to log into the new Freenas interface, the graphical interface, and some problems. As you can see, it's not updating. It's been sitting here for hours. I have tried it in Chrome. It does the same thing in Chrome. The other thing that's a little disconcerting is when I click on details, some of the disks don't report details. Some of them do. As you can see, there's no rhyme or reason to that. Now these are all showing details. Earlier, this last disk, DA5, was not showing temperature settings. This one, DA3, is still not showing temperature readings. DA2 is. And then, of course, I've got the whatchamacallit, the console up here, and you can see that I have no idea what all this means, but I just wanted to show it to you so you can see the problem I'm having. So let's see, if I go down here to storage, go to pools, yeah, it sees my test volumes, it sees everything there. Come over to here to disks. Yeah, smart is enabled on all of them. It's seeing all the volumes. Is it seeing the power, or is it seeing the temperature? No, I don't see them. So yeah, the new interface is not working very well. Let's switch over to Chrome and see if we have any difference. Yeah, so here we are on Chrome, and you can see the same thing. Disk details not available. It just sits here churning, and never updates the interface. Now, supposedly this, I went out and looked at the forum, and supposedly this was a problem. I turned my gain down a little bit. Still messing with this microphone. Apparently this was a problem in the U2 version, but I'm running the U4 version, and I couldn't find any information on this, but it's definitely not working. So what I can do is go back to the old interface. Let's see here, legacy web interface. Let's go back to that and log in. So the legacy is working, I assume. I don't know enough about Freenas to tell you whether it's working or not, but I can see my storage volumes in here. Not really giving me a lot of information. It's showing that it's healthy. As you can see, both volumes are healthy, but I don't get smart statistics here. Let's see. No, I don't see that. Maybe it's under reporting, under disk. No, I really don't see. You know, all of these charts are very, very nice to look at, but they're not really telling me what I really want to know, which is my smart status. So yeah, there's that. All right, well, let's go over and see. Let's see what the data looks like on the server. All right, so here we go. Let's go over to Adama's data and go to test, and you'll see, yes, all the information came over. All the files appear to be there. Let's see if I can actually launch a file and have it play. Yes, I can. It looks like it's working. So yeah, the copy of data was successful. The array is up and running, and I got really good drive speed or drive copy speeds across the network. I was getting 100 to 120 megabytes per second. Well, so there you go. We got it up and running. I honestly didn't think I was going to be able to pull this off, but this is more a video about XCP as a hypervisor than it was about Freenas. But, you know, people have been pestering me since I started this channel about, why don't you use Freenas, Joe? It's so much better. All right, well, for your, you know, for your purposes, it may be. I'm just not a, like I say, 10 years ago I used Freenas, loved it. But I've moved on from there. You know, I just haven't found a need for the ZFS file system. I find that the setup that I use works best for my circumstances. So, and obviously you can see Freenas has still got some issues with their new interface, and that's fine. No software is perfect, but now I'm not going to keep using Freenas. I am going to keep XCP on all of my servers in the rack, and I have another video coming up about using XCP-NG in the rack as opposed to Hyper-V and why I've made that decision. There's no reason not to. Now that I can do the PCI pass-through with the controller and pass those drives through to either Windows or a Linux machine, then I've got a win-win situation. The main reason I was running server OS on that Dell with all the drives is that I wanted to be able to run programs under Windows on top of being able to manage my storage on my server. So Freenas will not be staying on there, but you know, it just goes to show you it can be done. That PCI pass-through is a huge boon to virtualization. So I toyed with the idea of using Proxmox on these servers in my rack, but I ended up going with XCP. I just think it's a better hypervisor, and it's been around for years. Proxmox, no offense to Proxmox, I'm sure it's a wonderful hypervisor. And, Morton is using that over at my Playhouse. He's moving his rack and his infrastructure to Proxmox. And I commented on his video that, I like using XCP. It's a personal preference. And one of his subscribers commented that you cannot hide you cannot hide the fact that a machine is running as a VM in XCP, but you can in Proxmox. And that where that comes in is when you're trying to pass through an NVIDIA video card and have it not be aware that it's in a hyper or in a virtual environment, because the drivers then that come with the NVIDIA video card won't work. Well, I have a simple solution. Don't use NVIDIA driver, or don't use NVIDIA video cards. The vendor on those video cards, NVIDIA, has crippled their drivers to detect when they're used in a virtual environment, and they don't work. So it's a good reason to use an AMD. I use Radeon video cards now. I pretty much switched over off of NVIDIA to AMD, the Radeon 560, 570, 580 cards. I do have an NVIDIA card in my Unraid server, and I am able to pass through that video card. And I've got a video coming up on that as well. So you got that to look forward to. But so if you're a simple solution, like I said, in pass-through with these video cards is don't use NVIDIA. I mean, it's just another reason. Now, some people are stuck and they have to use NVIDIA, and so maybe Proxmox or one of the other hypervisors are a better fit for you. And I frankly don't know whether XCP is going to have that feature available to hide the fact that a machine is running in a virtualized environment, so that you don't have that problem with NVIDIA. But then you're violating the NVIDIA's license agreement. So it opens a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to get into. One thing I would like to see XCP do, and it is on the wish list, and that is to be able to turn on and off the pass-through through the GUI and not have to go out to the command line to do that. But it's you saw where I screwed up on the command line. So with one command line interface, you can wipe out your setting if you've got the wrong ID in there for the PCI device that you're trying to hide from XCP. So use that command with caution, right? So there you go, YouTube. We hope you found the video entertaining and informative as always. And I know it wasn't a soup to nuts install on that. I skipped a lot of steps, but my videos are not designed to be tutorial videos so much as videos showing you that something can be done if you put your mind to it. So again, Freenas will not be staying on that XCP hypervisor. It was fun to play with. It was nice to see that I was able to get that to work, but I think what I'm going to do is create another a Windows Server 2019 virtual machine and pass through the drives and go back to using Drive Bender on that unit. So, but we do have a whole bunch more videos coming up on XCP on how I was able to get my entire rack converted over. The one sticking point to me now is I need to convert my virtual machines over from Windows over to XCP. And so I need to figure out in my own mind how to do that before I show you how to do that. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Anyway, don't forget to come back and see us again. Donate if you're so inclined. And just keep in mind, any donations you make through PayPal or Patreon, they go right back into the channel to buy new products to do reviews on and test with and play with and whatnot. We also have some more Unraid videos coming up. And then, as you see there, I've got a Mac G4 on my desktop. Actually, I have a couple of those in here. So I'm just waiting on some components to come in. I like those old Mac units. They remind me of my early iMac days. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I got a video coming up on a couple of those as well. So thanks again for coming to see us, and please don't forget that we will see you on the other side.